On day 3 of testing, Mercedes did something that shouldn't be possible. They ran faster. They ran longer. And they made it look easy. But beneath the surface of that dominance, something didn't add up. Antonelli wasn't just quick. He was too smooth. Every throttle input, every hybrid release, perfectly balanced, almost pre-programmed. And that's exactly what raised suspicions inside two rival garages. Because under the 2026 rules, hybrid deployment must respond to the driver. Not guess in advance. Not behave like a simulation. But what Mercedes did in Sector 2, it didn't match what the sensors should show. Sources say the FIA was watching, but they didn't intervene. At least, not officially. Instead, the issue was flagged internally, classified as non-conclusive data, and quietly left alone. So why does this matter? Because if one team has already cracked predictive torque deployment, and the FIA refuses to act, this isn't just a technical shortcut. It's a legal gray zone, with championship-level consequences. And this trick? It's not new. We've seen it before. In 2019. In 2020. In 2021. Every time, it started with a whisper. And ended with a full-blown investigation. But this time, the silence is louder than ever. Because what Mercedes just did on day 3 might force every other team to cross the same line. And the FIA might not be ready to stop them. Officially, day 3 in Barcelona was just another test. No titles. No penalties. Just data. But every engineer on the pit wall knew the truth. This wasn't about logging laps. This was a declaration of intent. A political signal disguised as a technical program. Behind the garage doors, each team was racing a different enemy. McLaren had to prove their title wasn't a one-off. Ferrari stayed in the shadows, preserving their car until conditions were perfect. Red Bull? Gone. After the crash, they vanished from the session. And Audi, they were just trying to survive more than 4 laps without mechanical failure. But Mercedes walked in like they already knew something. No drama. No last-minute setups. Just Russell and Antonelli. 2 drivers, one purpose: run longer, faster, and cleaner than anyone else. And they did. Russell opened the morning with a 1 minute and 17.580 seconds, already faster than anyone had gone all week. Antonelli responded in the afternoon. Not by matching it, but by beating it. A 1 minute and 17.362 seconds. On a cold track. With almost no visible tire degradation. It looked clinical. Too clinical. Because what Mercedes showed wasn't just speed. It was control. Across power delivery, deployment patterns, and battery cycling. But here's what's strange. The FIA didn't ask for clarifications. Not publicly. And that silence? It's louder than any protest. Because this was the moment the paddock realized. Something about Mercedes' program wasn't just ahead. It was operating by a different logic entirely. And nobody could explain how. From the outside, day 3 looked clean. No major crashes. No public controversies. Just cars running laps under a cold Spanish sky. But something about the way Mercedes ran felt too refined. Antonelli's driving, especially in Sector 2, drew attention. Not because of a mistake, but because it was flawless. Every lap. Identical energy release. Identical corner exit torque. Even telemetry analysts began to notice it. Now, under 2026 regulations, energy deployment must reflect driver input. That means real-time reaction. Not prediction. Not smoothing. Not automation. But Antonelli's output curve? It didn't spike. It didn't dip. It flowed. Exactly the same way, every time. One rival engineer described it quietly as too good to be true. Another, more direct. It looks like they're letting the car do the thinking. And this is where things start to get uncomfortable. Because what Mercedes is suspected of using isn't technically illegal. Not yet. It falls inside a gray zone. A shadow area the FIA has refused to close, despite warnings from at least 3 technical directors. But now that one team might be exploiting it, the silence feels intentional. And that's what no one wants to admit. At least, not publicly. Not until someone forces the FIA to explain. Here's where everything starts to shift. Because what Mercedes may have done isn't just clever engineering. It's something the FIA already knows about, and chose not to ban. It's called predictive torque shaping. And in theory, it's allowed. At least for now. Instead of responding to the driver's throttle input in real time, the system anticipates it. It creates a curve before the driver even touches the pedal. Smoother. Cleaner. More efficient. And if you do it right, it's invisible to the sensors. And indistinguishable from perfect driving. According to 2 independent sources, This exact loophole was raised in the December technical working group. Some teams pushed to outlaw it before testing, but the FIA delayed. They called it an area under review, which means open season. And here's the real twist. This isn't new. It's been tried before, quietly, by at least one engine manufacturer in 2023, but it never made it to race spec. It wasn't mature enough. Now, Mercedes may have solved the final piece, and no one knows what the FIA plans to do about it. The silence is deliberate, because once it's labeled a violation, any data collected with it could be thrown out, and that would collapse Mercedes' entire test program. So for now, everyone is pretending it's not happening, even if the numbers say otherwise. This isn't really about lap times, or even who looked fastest on day 3. It's about what's happening behind closed doors, inside the data rooms, inside the FIA. Because if predictive shaping is active and undetectable, it changes the entire foundation of power deployment. The FIA's official position? No problem was observed. No protest was filed. Everything remained within parameters. But here's what they're not explaining. They're not publishing deployment traces. They're not clarifying input rules. They're not defining what driver influence really means. And that silence? It's protecting them, not the teams. Because the moment they confirm Mercedes is using pre-mapped torque behavior, they face 2 problems. 1, they'd have to explain why they didn't intervene. 2, they'd have to investigate the other teams who asked about it, and were told not to. This is no longer about technical legality. It's about precedent. And once you set a precedent in Formula 1, you can't undo it without rewriting the entire book. The last time the FIA ignored a red flag like this? It was 2019. Ferrari. Fuel flow sensors. And the aftermath took months to untangle. This time, the stakes are even higher. Because it's not one team, one engine. It's the entire hybrid framework for 2026. And no one wants to be the first to say it out loud. If this loophole stays open, everything changes. Not just for Mercedes, but for every team trying to catch up. McLaren is already testing a similar control strategy. But they're not there yet. Their energy transitions still show micro delays. Millisecond gaps in throttle-to-wheel response. Red Bull? They've been silent since the crash. But insiders believe they've developed their own system. And it's not built around smoothing. It's built around spikes. Deliberate bursts of electric torque to manipulate corner exits. Ferrari has remained quiet. Too quiet. They skipped day 3, citing program flexibility. But multiple sources say they've been struggling with heat. The kind that comes when your battery can't keep up with your torque map. And then there's Audi. Their hybrid unit hasn't even run cleanly for half a day. Hydraulic issues. Software faults. Telemetry that doesn't match behavior. They're not racing the front. They're racing the clock. Now imagine this grid heading into 2026. 8 cars. 3 philosophies. No clear ruling on what's legal. And no way to prove what's not. And if the FIA doesn't define the limits now, they may not be able to later. Because once the season starts, and once points are on the line, no team will give up an edge, even if it means pushing the system beyond the gray. This isn't just about performance. It's about trust. And that is already breaking down. So here's where we are. Day 3 is over. The data is logged. The lap times are written down. And yet, no one can explain what Mercedes did. Not fully. Not without raising bigger questions. The FIA hasn't issued a directive. No clarification. No confirmation. No denial. And that silence is starting to feel strategic. Because if they admit there's a loophole, they'll be forced to close it. And that could unravel every test session run so far. But if they stay quiet, they allow a new standard to emerge. One that wasn't agreed upon. One that not every team can reach in time. There are whispers already. That more teams are preparing to copy the trick. That Red Bull has something different coming. Something even more radical. And that Ferrari might not wait for approval. And if the FIA doesn't act before Bahrain, it won't just be a gray zone. It will be the new normal. Because this story? It's not finished. It's not even close. And day 3 may have only been the first move in a much larger game.